It's a 5 all day, every day. Great. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling y'all right now. Tiberius, it's a 5. No 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 4.5. This game is a straight up 5 all the way across. Garou, Mark of the Wolves is the best fighting game on the console. Fight me if you don't think so.
Ness, what are you talking about? Fight you? Don't be a fool. Of course this game is a 5. I, Tiberius' co-host, give Garou, Mark of the Wolves a Tiberius rating of 5.
Oh. Okay. All right, well, that was easy.
This is the first time on Mission Neo Geo that we have given a grade at the very beginning of the episode. Is Garou, Mark of the Wolves the best fighting game on the Neo Geo AES, or on the Neo Geo in general? Imagine this. 10 years have passed. You, a legendary warrior, a fighter, greatest martial artist known to those in the city, have defeated the world's most dangerous crime lord. You've killed him, and in doing so, you've adopted his son, trained him up to become a young warrior himself. And secretly, someone has decided to invite you to a new tournament. You must test your skills to hone and show that your martial arts skills are still the greatest, the best, to win the tournament. Today on Mission Neo Geo, we discuss the greatest fighting game on the Neo Geo, Garou, Mark of the Wolves. Stay tuned.
What it is, welcome back to the channel. It's your guy Ness, and today's episode is special. Mission Neo Geo, this is the one that so many of you have been asking about, Garou, Mark of the Wolves on Neo Geo AES. This game came out on AES, came out on the arcade console. We actually, surprisingly enough, didn't see this game on Neo Geo CD. However, this game got tons of ports. Many of you might be familiar with this as Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves on the Dreamcast. And then there's also some ports that we saw on the Japanese version of PlayStation 2, as well as they updated the netcode for this game on Xbox. And then we also saw it on PlayStation. We've seen tons of different ports for this game. Limited Run has done a copy of this. Pix and Love has done a copy of this. We see tons of conversions, repros, and we're gonna go deeper into that later on in this episode. But Garou, Mark of the Wolves, is it the best fighting game on the console? Many will say yes. There's a select few of you that's gonna say no, but let's dive into it today. All right, so Garou, Mark of the Wolves came out in 1999 on the arcade console. So Garou, Mark of the Wolves came out November of 1999, and then that following year in February came out on the Neo Geo AES. So we saw the arcade version of this game, and we of course saw it on the Neo Geo AES. And this was the 6th installment of the Fatal Fury series on the console. So we saw many of the original game, Fatal Fury 1, 2. We saw a lot of those ports on the Sega Genesis. We saw them on the Super Nintendo. We saw a few of those ports make it to Game Gear. We saw some of those ports make it to Sega CD. However, by the time we got to the end of the life cycle of the Neo Geo AES, mainly just the games, because the console was done in the late 90s, the actual game itself was the last Fatal Fury on the console, and by many accords is actually the best Fatal Fury in the entire series. Now, for many of you watching this right now, at the time of this video, City of the Wolves, the sequel, the true sequel to Garou, Mark of the Wolves, has not yet come out, and we have a few more months from the time of this video of when that game comes out as its true successor. But Garou, Mark of the Wolves actually had about 70% of its true sequel that was a 2D fighter as well, was about 70% done, but it got axed, and later years, in recent years, we've seen, mock-ups of character designs, adding additional characters, stages, etc. So it's rather unfortunate we didn't get to see that 2D version of the sequel come to fruition, but we definitely get to see it with City of the Wolves. Many of us in the early 2000s didn't get to play this game on the Neo Geo AES. I know I didn't. My first introduction to this game was on the Sega Dreamcast, which was released in 2001. And let me tell you, this game was phenomenal. By far my favorite Fatal Fury game that I had ever played at the time. And of course, there was a competing fighting game out there that many would say would rival many of its gameplay attributes, character designs, and rich, sharp sprites in bright colors with Capcom's Street Fighter Third Strike. Now, when we compare the two, of course, SNK doing Fatal Fury and Capcom doing, of course, Street Fighter, both of these took a completely different approach in terms of gameplay style, character designs in both genres and in both series of the games. For Third Strike, this was definitely the first time that we had seen different character designs, techniques. The parry system was of course introduced during the Street Fighter 3 series, and then of course with Garou Mark of the Wolves, the Just Defend. Now, in terms of comparing the two, the parry system in Street Fighter Third Strike being, of course, pressing 4 just before getting hit to be able to parry and block the opponent, which, if many of you remember from EVO, Justin Wong and Daigo fighting Chun-Li and Ken on Ken's stage in the US, that was by far one of the most replayed matches in competitive fighting games in history. So we had that, and then of course from Garou, we didn't see a lot of that gameplay, or we didn't get to see anything from that angle in EVO, but critics and many gamers out there have said many times that Garou rivals Third Strike in many ways. With the Just Defend technique, instead of pressing forward before getting hit, you actually press backwards on your remote or your controller, or of course your arcade stick to just in time. Now, there's many different techniques that were introduced, Terry Bogard being one of the only original characters added, but many of the new characters introduced in this game, well, they have roots from some of the original fighters from the original Fatal Fury series. So some folks may have roots with those fighters from Art of Fighting, maybe sons or daughters from martial artists from Fatal Fury. So there's a lot of great ways to play this game. From 2005 to 2016, we saw various ports of Garou Mark of the Wolves or Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves across various consoles. PlayStation 2 received a port which made it from the Japan release in June of 2005. And then we also had Xbox 360, where that netcode was updated and gamers were actually able to play this game online for the first time, which was rather nice. And we saw that in June of 2009. And then for mobile, and then later on for PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and then of course later on we saw it on Windows in 2016. So this game got a lot of love, and we've seen a lot of ports come across from limited run, Pix and Love, various different copies to make it look like the original AES version, and then of course just the PS4 disc that you probably see online or at your local conventions pretty often. So in terms of this game, let's go over it. Does it have a high replay value? Yes, it does. Is it definitely a high recommend to have in your collection? By far. Now, for those of you out there watching this video that may not be into Neo Geo collecting, you have various ways of getting this game. If you want to emulate it, of course you can do it. I actually have it playing behind me on my MVSX right now on the MVSX. So we have that. Now, how many copies of Garou Mark of the Wolves do I have? Well, we'll go through it. I'll do a little B-roll here, but of course I have the PlayStation 2, the Japanese copy. I have the Sega Dreamcast copy, and then of course we have the luxurious Garou Mark of the Wolves AES copy in English, and we're about to go through that right now in terms of what all comes with this game, the full look of the insert, and then we're going to go ahead and discuss how not to get got out there online when you're looking to purchase this game. Let's get into it.
All right, Garou Mark of the Wolves. Of course, you know we have this in an acrylic case, chilling. So again, this one is from Eclipse cases. So I've got this one in my Eclipse case, so check them out on Instagram. I'll drop a link in the bio if you're interested in getting an acrylic case. So I have two acrylic cases that I use. The ones from, of course, Eclipse, the UAE, and then the other ones from Kaiser. So those are the two cases that I use. All right, so looking at Garou Mark of the Wolves here, this is a legit copy of Garou Mark of the Wolves, and this is probably one of the most vibrant covers on the Neo Geo. Metal Slug 4 does have a yellow modern insert, but this is the only yellow insert that I have showing on my shelf here. So as you can see, very bright pops. You've got Rock Howard and Terry Bogard there. A lot of great kind of film reels right here. And let's open this up. All right, so looking at the cartridge, and yes, I do play this game quite often. You've got the kind of the vibrant caution sticker there in the gloss here, and on the top of the cart, please don't mind my fingerprints, the Made in Japan on the cartridge here, and then of course the PCBs. And then let's look at the manual real quick, and then we're going to get into the most controversial thing. So we have the manual. Looks really good. And we've got the pages there. And we've got the Mark of the Wolves pages. So let's get into how to spot the conversions, the repros for this game, because this is probably, outside of Metal Slug and maybe a handful of other titles, this game is probably one of the most counterfeited games, just due to the fact that it's such a popular fighting game, and there are a lot of folks out there that want it. Let's start with the obvious without having to open the cartridge itself, and let's see if I can. So the color of the PCBs should be dark. They have a very dark gray tint to them. So if you're looking online and you notice that they're just stark white or they're green, you know someone's been in here, and this is just for the contact points, right? So the board itself, you know, will be green, but the contact points should have a gray hue to them. Very dark gray. You don't normally see that on a lot of carts. There's that. The cartridge sticker. Do you see that high gloss? If you notice and you see how Rock and Terry look, there's no blurriness in the picture on the cart. Okay. Another way to notice is if you look at the edges of your cart sticker, are they rounded or are they sharp like it's just been cut into a box? That is a telltale sign that the cart sticker is not legit. So there's that. There's one. Manuals can be a little bit difficult, but making sure that you have the proper color on your SNK, and also making sure that the fonts and colors of your manuals are crisp and sharp. No blurriness. Another way to tell is where your staples are punched. Generally, the staples are punched right on the very top of the ROM cart
picture here. The very bottom of the staple will measure with that, and then right here. And then of course here. If your manual doesn't have these pages with the warning, epilepsy card, all that good stuff, or it's a different color, like it's yellow instead of this kind of orange color, you have a repro manual. Lastly is the insert itself. The biggest way that I find on the back of the insert, and also here, is the color of the SNK, which if you have other games that are a little less inexpensive, you can tell. Also, you can use a jeweler's loupe to look and make sure that it's not pixelated with white dots, etc. in the SNK. That's if you're really getting into it. You may not need to do that for a game like this, but for something like a Metal Slug 1 or you know, a Kazuna Encounter, that's something that you just want to go over with a fine-tooth comb. Now, the editing and chopping of the measurements of how this game looks in terms of the picture, right? So when you look at a conversion or an NCI, it's going to look pretty damn close, pretty close. And when you're looking at NCI copies of this game, they are very indistinguishable in terms of color, the font, the sharpness, so it is very difficult. Now, one thing that I've noticed over the years, in an easy telltale sign, is I look at these reels right here. You see these reels right here? So you've got the picture reels. These dots, right? The little yellow dots here, I count 19, including this one that's cut half off. So if you count one that's got 20 or 21, your insert is blown up and it's fake. So I hope that helps. I know many folks out there are gonna be like, oh my God, like what? That's wrong. This is from years, this is my years of doing my due diligence and research on this game. So if any of you feel that I'm incorrect, if there's other areas that you think that you could do a telltale sign outside of just opening the cart, and yes, I have opened this cart before, and I was extremely careful in doing so. I didn't break any tabs or anything like that, but I did that because this is one of those games where I needed to do it for a peace of mind. The boards, and I think I have a picture, and I'll blow that up, put that in B-roll so you know. But yes, this is a legit copy of this game. There you go in terms of spotting potential fakes. And I'll do some B-roll footage of games that look really close to this game in terms of the English copy, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the biggest question being, Ness, how much does a Garou Mark of the Wolves cost? This is where we get into the muddy waters here, because there's going to be a lot of folks out there that are going to say, it costs this much, it costs that much. I'm here to tell you that although there are some super crazy mint copies out there, there are people out there spending a lot more on this game than it's actually worth. So I will say that. This is where we're going to get into the muddy waters here, folks. I know some of you out there are not going to want to hear this. For some of our sellers out there, you're probably trying to sell this game for a lot of money. For my buyers out there, you're trying to get it as cheap as possible. So here's what we do. Garou Mark of the Wolves, over the last 3 years, if you're looking online basically, so if you're just looking online from online solds and it's an actual legit copy, will range from the price of $3,000 to $500 to $5,500 USD. Now, condition-wise, those copies aren't considered mint. Were the cartridges opened? Yes, they were. Because this game is such, it has a high, it is highly faked, right? So, and this isn't me deterring you. This is why we kind of went through ways to spot fakes online. And this is why I tell every single last one of you, for those of you that reach out to me in DMs like, hey, Ness, I'm looking for a Garou. I really want a copy. I want an English copy, but I don't want to pay all this money. Well, unfortunately, you may get lucky, and that just depends on the time of year, the actual year it is. I've seen Garous drop on eBay just randomly in the middle of the night for 3,000 bucks. Yeah, the copy wasn't that great, but it was legit, and they're sold and they're gone within a week. Versus you've got a bunch of repros, conversions, etc. that are out there. They'll sit up for a couple of months, couple of weeks, and prices will fluctuate on that. So let's start with the Japanese copy, and I'm going to put a picture up for you. A lot of times you're not going to run into a conversion or a repro of a Garou Mark of the Wolves simply because there's tons of copies out there. Now, in terms of price ranges for that game, it hasn't fluctuated too much, but you already know when there's a sequel to a game that's getting ready to come out, that's generally where you see the heaviest of price fluctuations. So this isn't me trying to bump the price up. I already have a copy. I'm not here to try to bump up the price or anything like that. I'm just trying to help you all as the viewer, because many of you have asked me, how do I get a Garou? Where do I find a Garou? How much is a good price? Like, these are all the things. For those of you that don't want to spend the crazy amounts of money for an English copy, here's my recommendation to you. Go for an MVS cart, and if you're a completionist, go for an MVS kit. That will be the least expensive way for you to get a copy, a legit copy for this game. Again, folks, we're not talking about emulation. We're not talking about 161 in one carts. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about the legit hardware, the physical game itself. This is what this channel is about. If we are talking about an AES copy, then of course you're going to range somewhere between the $1,400 to $2,300 range for a Japanese version of Garou Mark of the Wolves. If someone's offering it for $3,000, way too high. Heck, at this point, if they're offering it at $2,500, I'm questioning that, because there's a couple of things to look out for with the Japanese version versus the English. For one, you've got the box, the snap case, the game, the manual, but the Japanese copy also has a registration card. So that is also included in there. So for my completionists out there that want the full complete, make sure if that's what you're looking for, that it has a registration card in the Japanese version. If that doesn't mean anything to you, then getting just the manual, the cart, and the game, and the box, and everything like that, then you're Gucci and you're good to go. However, when we move over into the English realm, we don't have to worry about a registration card or anything like that. We're just worried about the box, the insert, the manual, the cart, all that good stuff. Many of you are gonna say, Ness, I've seen these games go for, you know, $8,000, $10,000, $11,000. And really, my question to you is, why? Was it mint? Okay. If it was mint, that's great. Is it a game that you just absolutely had to have? Is this your Grail game? Because it was my Grail game. And it was this was the deciding factor as to me being truly serious about collecting for the Neo Geo AES. This was my top tier game that I wanted to have, and Garou was it. But for many of you out there that are looking to purchase this game and you're like, hey, I need to get it for cheap, unfortunately, this is not a cheap game. Like, if you want it cheap, buy it on PlayStation 4. Buy it and download it online. That is going to be your cheapest way of getting this game. If you want the original hardware, MVS is going to be your cheapest route to go. And even there, MVS carts are ranging somewhere between $200, $350 for a nice clean MVS copy that's not too beat up. And if you're looking for an MVS kit, you're probably looking somewhere around $900 to $1,200 that it's got the marquee, the stickers, and all that stuff and that jazz. So you have that. I've given you the prices here. There's going to be some fluctuations out there, and there's going to be sellers that don't necessarily want to get rid of this game. You have to understand, this is one of those games that has a lot of replay value considering it's such a popular fighting game. And two, it has a lot of nostalgia for a lot of folks. So for those individuals out there that have a copy and that don't want to sell it, me included, I wouldn't sell it. But there is justifications out there. Sellers are willing to let go for a price. So if I wasn't trying to sell it today and tomorrow someone says, hey, I'll give you a third more than what it's worth, it's gonna leave a question mark and be like, would I be dumb in not selling it? Because, I mean, that's a lot of money that I could potentially get. And that's not me justifying that for the sellers, and that's not me justifying that for the buyers, but you all know your budgets. You all know what you can afford. Don't try to break your humping back trying to get this game. There's tons of different ways to play it, and this is just me being legit with you. For all of you that have a copy, congratulations. For all of you out there that have recently or, over the last 6 to 8 months picked up this copy, whether it's Japanese, English, or an MVS version, congratulations. You're enjoying a piece of fighting history for sure. So, with that, collect and play the way you want to collect and play your games, and drop comments down below. Have you played Garou Mark of the Wolves? Are you excited for City of the Wolves? Let us know. Tiberius, take us out of here.
You've done very well with your collection, and it's commendable. Although that you're quite horrible at playing games, but it's neither here nor there. It's okay.
Don't start that, Tiberius. Don't start that.
It's okay if you can't play. It's okay if you can't beat me.
Now, last time we played, you got smoked.
Anyway, dearest friends, I, Tiberius co-host, thank you once again for joining us on today's episode of Mission Neo Geo. We bid you good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to you. And for next time's episode, stay tuned, because it will be another banger indeed for us to discuss and speak about. And what is that title, you say? Well, you'll have to look until next time, because it is to be continued. See you again.